present several different learning environments that are, I consider them all part of a postmodern Vygotskian learning methodology. And we're going to do that in a variety of ways. My hope in, when I wrote the proposal for this, which now seems about 10 years ago, one of my great desires was to find a way to present on these learning environments that are very much emergent, process-oriented, tool and result environments in a way that didn't turn them into a product. So in trying to create this symposium, which has been done with many, many people, some of whom are going to be up on screen, some of whom are in the room, some of whose voices you're going to actually read out loud. In creating it, I wanted to see if we could find a way to continue the process of having these learning environments emerge, and to do that with all of you. And not having now spent 4 days at AERA, which I do every year, I have now for I think the past almost 10 years, that's a bigger challenge than one would hope, right? To continue a process when you're at a very large academic conference that is completely focused on product. One of the things I've experienced this week is I often sit in sessions, and this is not a critique actually of the people presenting, I'm bored, and I suddenly realize partway through that the actual work the people are presenting on is fascinating. Yeah. But that the trappings of an academic presentation have taken all of the life out of it, and then I can listen in a new way and think, what are these people actually doing with young people, with teachers, with community people? What did they do that they got here to this presentation? So I'm hoping in this that instead of just telling you about what was done with and for and by the people that we're going to be talking about, that we will do some of it together. So you will have a little bit of a different experience of that. I'm presenting today with people both who aren't here. So the 3 people I sent in the symposium for were not able to come. I have people here who were not part of it who will be presenting with me. And then, like I said, I'm going to enlist all of you probably in some pieces of it, and certainly in the next piece, because I actually would like us to, as part of attempting to give you process, I both want to give you a little taste of some of the ways that I and the people that I'm talking about have used improvisational theater in our work. So I want us to begin with an improvisational activity. I both want to do that to give you a taste of that, and because to help us transition from a conference performance to something that we create together. So I'm going to ask people to stand up, and let's see how to do this. Let's make some space so that we've got enough space to have a small circle in the middle. If we just move this one, we should be fine. We don't need a very large space. We're going to move around, actually, so we're just going to begin. This one could be our monolith.
Yes.
Actually, this woman last night I was at a early childhood business meeting last night, and she was presenting, and she said, this presentation does not need a PowerPoint, but I'm addicted to them. And she then said, I used to be addicted to overheads, and this is sort of like ratcheting up to heroin. She's like, PowerPoint is like way more addictive. This is like,
This is early childhood?
this is always good to know who's taking care of our young children. Okay, so I actually chose this intro exercise because it's the most uncomfortable improv exercise I know. And I thought that would really help us transition. Although it's not uncomfortable in the ways people can sometimes think of performance. Nobody's going to be by themselves standing up in front of us doing anything. But it will help me. Because what we're essentially going to do is we're going to slow the speed with which we are doing everything down. So we're going to begin, put your hands at your side. And unlock your knees if they are locked. Relax your shoulders if they are tense. Stop holding your stomach in if you are holding your stomach in. And take a very, very deep breath through the nose and out through the mouth. Through the nose, out through the mouth. One more time. Very deep. Hold it for a second. And out. What I want everybody to do, and I'm actually going to start directing instead of just doing it, so you should stay in slow motion, is you're going to very, very slowly turn your head to the left. You're going to do it so slowly that if I were to look at you, I wouldn't actually see your head moving, because it's such a slow process. So just very, very slowly turn your head incrementally. If you stop breathing, start. If your knees have locked up, just keep very, very, very slowly. Join you, Stacey. We're switching into a slower mode. So you're going to very slowly be turning your head to the left, so slowly that I won't be able to see it happening. What I need people to do is begin to move out around each other. So you're not bumping into each other, but you're moving. Preparing for this presentation, I briefly did a search for who makes use of this quote, and found very, very little other than what I knew I would find. It's not, as far as I can tell, a very well used part of what Vygotsky said, and if other people know of people, I'd be fascinated and thrilled. For me, it might be one of the first things I was ever introduced to of Vygotsky's. Although that's not completely true, because I took a trip to Cuba in 1987 to visit preschools before I had ever heard of anything about Vygotsky. So my first introduction was actually from Cuban educators talking about their training in Russia, and I then promptly forgot about it for the next 5 years until I this being one of the first things I was introduced to. I have been a student, a colleague, a co-creator of the approach at the East Side Institute together with Dr. Holtzman and Dr. Newman and many others. And this quote has guided much of my work. So in preparing for this presentation, I was particularly thinking about the impact that it's had on me as an educational researcher. So I was a preschool teacher. I was introduced to the work of Newman and Holtzman and Vygotsky as a teacher, and I actually went back to school to continue to develop my understanding of that. And one of the things that meant, if you went back to school to get a doctorate, is you became a researcher. Mm-hmm. So I'm already off script, which is fine because I'm an improviser. Okay, so in preparing for this, I was thinking about what has this meant for me as a researcher. And what I understand Vygotsky to be saying, among many other things, is that it is, as human beings and as people who are studying other human beings or studying ourselves, as opposed to people who might study the stars or rats or plants, thank you. We're in a unique position. And from that position, we must continuously be searching for method, which is very different than applying a method or creating techniques that we then use, and that we can never forget that. So I've struggled with this quote theoretically, I've realized, as I went back to kind of re-examine it, even as it has been entirely my lived experience of myself as an educator and as a researcher. So very particularly as a creator at the East Side Institute in New York City, once I became an educational researcher, I realized what I was invited to do was, that's great, go create some things for us to study. right? It was not a, now I'm a researcher and my job is to go out and find interesting things, although I think that's a fine thing for researchers to do, and look at them. But my job has been to bring into existence learning environments where I can simultaneously be creating them and discovering what it is they might have to tell us at the same time. And that in the process of doing that, the actual learning environment gets transformed, not because I'm studying it, but because those discoveries that one makes as a tool and result researcher are then fuel for further creative activity. One of the things Lois asked me when I was preparing for this is, did I think that wasn't true of other research? Is that the question I think you might ask? And I thought to myself, I think it's possibly true of all research, and in my experience, that gets stifled by the performance of what it means to be a researcher. Where as soon as you get that cap and that gown and that job, your job is no longer to be one of the people creating, but one of the people knowing about what other people are creating. And even sometimes you're separated even from that they're creating something. So this quote has guided my work, and part of what I mean by us creating this together is maybe we'll make some discoveries about it here. I feel like I'm continuing to make some discoveries as I was preparing for this. Second quote, which I told you I was off script, comes from Schools for Growth, a book by Lois Holtzman that in some ways for me as an educator was what helped me understand Vygotskian methodology in practice in schools and outside of schools and in terms of learning. And it really sort of clarified for me this idea of tool and result, that as a educator I wasn't looking to create products, I was looking to create a continuous relationship between the process of creating learning environments and what came out of those. Okay, so I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the methodology guiding 3 different projects that you're going to hear the voices of participants from today. They've all been guided by the social therapeutic tool and result methodology of the East Side Institute. 2 of them are actually learning environments at the East Side Institute, and one of them is a youth program at the All Stars Project, which I will tell you more about what all of those are in a moment. Okay, so among Vygotsky's many contributions to educators, I think is a demonstration that learning is social and that the only good learning is inseparable from development. Also, one of those, speaking of sort of, what is it? Anyway, speaking of sort of continuously making discoveries, I feel like that phrase of the relation to only good learning is learning which is an advance of development. I would have told you 5 years ago that I knew exactly what it meant. And I feel like in the last year, as I've tried to kind of develop myself as somebody who can talk about this work and as somebody who's creating learning environments, I keep discovering things that I didn't understand or that were not understandable in the absence of my having created some places where I was helping people learn and develop. But for the most part, learning in our society, and I've been a teacher my entire adult life. I realized the other day somebody asked me something about next year, and I only think of years as from September to August. Like they were like, "Oh no, you mean the year after?" I was like, "No." So I'm somebody who's got a deep relationship to schools, and for the most part, learning in our society, particularly in schools, is separated from overall human development. Right? Schools have become, and maybe always were, but certainly in this moment in history it's particularly apparent because of the lack of developmental environments elsewhere maybe. Schools are entirely focused on learning in a very acquisitional way. And the relationship between the need for human growth and how learning can support that and how development supports learning is absent from school environments. So the approach that guides the 3 programs that I'm going to be talking about is very much an aim at not making a separation between learning and development, and creating zones of proximal development that are continuously being created by the participants, that are not designed to be the more skilled person, or I as the person with the doctorate providing and creating a zone of proximal development or scaffolding the people that I'm working with, but us co-creating an environment where the group can go beyond itself. I'm saying a lot of different things. Hopefully we'll get clearer as we talk to the people who are going to present with me. So one of the tools that I have used and that many of the people I've worked with have used to help that has been improvisation. And in part, because of hopefully what you experienced, it is the games that have been created by theater people for helping people slow down, step out of the roles and relationships that they're ordinarily in, can help create the conditions for people to be co-creators with each other. I mean, I think there's many ways to understand the value of it, but I think that experience of how do you help 20 people who have just been doing one performance of conference going, work to co-create an environment. One way to do that is to help people improvise together, to not be just playing out the scripts that they're used to. Okay, I want to note to myself. Anyway, there we go. Okay, so that's a little bit of the methodology that we're going to be talking about today. Let's see where I go. Okay, that's further than I wanted to go. Okay, so the way we're going to do that, or what we're going to do now, is I, over the past 5 months, have been interviewing participants in 3 different projects. They were done as panel interviews, and I then took those interviews and have created a film of them. I want to say a little bit about that film. No, I don't. I'm going to do something else first. Sorry. So let me introduce you to them. Let me introduce you to those projects, and then we'll hear their voices. Hey, husband, that didn't do what we said it was going to do. There. Do I not have it? I think it's down here. Okay, so this is going to be silent for a bit, and I'm going to talk and tell you about these programs. Youth on Stage is a performance school and theater for young people ages 14 to 21, and it's located in New York City. It's one of, I think, 5 youth development programs at the All Stars Project, which is a nonprofit supplemental education center that uses the Newman and Holtzman developmental learning methodology. Youth on Stage offers young people of all experience levels and economic backgrounds the opportunity to perform in and create plays that have something to say about the world and its future. It's a theater school for young people, some of whom have aspirations to go on and become actors and actresses and directors, and some of whom are doing it for a variety of other reasons. Anybody who auditions, which is a hallmark of the All Stars programs, anybody who auditions gets into the program. They have, since its beginnings in 2003, Youth on Stage has worked with over 300 young people. And the interview that I did with them, I wasn't actually conducting the interview, but I think part of what's interesting about it is the young people were actually presenting to their teachers, right? So the new teachers at Youth on Stage, the new people who are going to be teaching them improvisation and stagecraft and all those different things, were being taught by the young people who had graduated from the program about the program. So I was filming that interview of those young people. These are clips from a montage about the program and the different plays that they have created over the last few years. Okay, I have to wait until I get my next program up. Developing Teachers Fellowship Program is a product of the Eastside Institute, where I am on the faculty. And this is a program that I created now 4 years ago. It is a training program for New York City teachers who apply to the program and then come and spend a year in an intensive training program learning the tool and result methodology through both improvisation, philosophical dialogue, and a certain amount of supervision. Jill is a graduate of that program. We'll hear from her soon. Raise your hand. The goal of the Developing Teachers Program is to reinitiate the development of the teachers, in part so that they can support the development of the young people in their classrooms. So far we've trained 28 teachers, ranging from preschool special ed teachers through people working in high schools and theater departments, English departments, math. We specifically bring all of those people together out of a belief that people learn best in group environments that are where the people are not exactly like them. That it's an interdisciplinary and integrated, in this case, that people are able to most grow and go beyond themselves. And that you get the richest zone of proximal development. So that was in the improv workshop. This is the classroom of one of the teachers who graduated from the program. It's a first and second grade self-contained special ed class. This particular teacher, I think she's been teaching for 2 years at the time, she very much took on bringing the improv into the classroom. So these mostly young boys spent a portion of every day doing improvisational activities together, including, which I love this picture, it's the mirroring exercise that theater people do. And the actual film, this was a film she created as her final project in the program. The final game is a game called Red Ball, which is this improv warm-up. When you see it with the sound, it's absolutely very, very sweet. The third program is also at the Eastside Institute, the international class, and Esben, who is filming here, is a current member of that. The international class is a year-long course of study in postmodern and activity theoretic approaches to human development and learning. It's primarily taught by Dr. Holtzman, and it brings together innovators, activists, professionals, intellectuals, scholars from diverse cultures. Since 2004, the program has trained, I think, 45 professionals from 20 different countries. Like all of the approaches at the Institute, like all of the training programs, it's grounded in a method of social therapeutics, of improvisational, philosophically informed, performance-based approaches to human development and learning. This is the current class. These scenes, I was filming them, they were creating bilingual poems. So there's 2 languages in each of these pairs, and they were working together to create a poem that included both languages and then perform it for the group. I actually like watching this. This is in the Eastside Institute. My favorite part of this picture is the sunset in the background with the water towers in New York City. So the video that you're going to see in a moment is a combination of clips from these interviews that I did with participants from these 3 programs. One of the things that similar to what I said about what we're doing together, my goal in these interviews was not to stop the learning process, but to have the interviews be a part of that discovery. So in some ways, I don't even know that I knew this going into the interviews. What we created was them and I as co-researchers of what it is they had been creating. And I feel like you see that, hopefully, in some of these clips, people sort of aha moments of, oh, I didn't know that's what we were doing, which I think in all of their cases, has then fed back into the work that they're doing. So I think, again, sometimes interviews can be a culmination in a way, or maybe it never is for the people in them, but we relate to them as that. So I tried in these interviews, mostly I think the participants didn't allow that, as I hope you'll see. I have, as a good researcher, divided the clips into 3 themes, which was the process of listening to them, and I actually have a much better understanding of propaganda now, like what you can do with people's words and get it to say whatever you want. But hopefully, I don't think that's. I think this is an expression of what we've created together. So the first set of clips you're going to hear, I understand part of what people to be talking about is the activity of doing what you don't know how to do. So the understanding of development that we're working with at the Institute and at the All-Stars is a move away from development as a set of stages that people go through, and an understanding of development, if you will, as the creating of stages, in a theatrical sense, for people to go beyond themselves, to do new performances. And what you're left with when you get rid of those stages, but you keep the sense that we all have that human beings develop, is the creative activity of people doing what they don't yet know how to do. I'm probably going to pepper throughout this. I've been spending a great deal of time with a 2-year-old in the last, well, I guess I haven't been spending a great deal in the last year, although he was 1 when we started that. And I think what I've discovered to be wondrous about his development is the participating in his journey to join human cultures and the ways that he does that without having any idea of what he's doing or needing to. And that he's always doing things he doesn't know how to do. Like it's just, I mean, I knew that as a preschool teacher, but a 2-year-old where they haven't yet at all been sucked into that you have to know things before you do it, it's so eye-opening. So we're attempting to create those kinds of environments where people can go beyond themselves and do what they don't know how to do. So we're going to meet some of the participants, and then at different points, you're going to be some of the participants. So some people weren't on film. So I will cue participant 1 when it's your turn.
Every time it was an event, I was asked to do something new, totally new role. Like, Steve, we want you to do that. I'm like, yes. Before I could think about it, I'm like, yes, of course I will. I'm like, dear God, what did I say yes to? And then I love challenges. So, I took on the role. Everything went well. I'm like, oh, okay, this is not so bad. And then they asked me to do the next thing. The next thing was even harder. And I was like, they really trust me to do this? They really think I can do it? If they think I can do it, then maybe I can. So let me give that a shot. It was scary, but because they put me in the role and they believe that I can take on that role, it made me feel like they see it, I should see it.
Every single day that we spend together, and especially during the residencies, I go home with some notion of I've never thought about this before, or I had no idea that I could do this. So continually finding myself in situations where I do something that I didn't think I was capable of. Yeah. And I think that happens to me a lot.
I'm not allowed to be Sita, and it's just as simple as that. Who you are doesn't matter anymore. I learned that people change, and they're not what you expect them to be, so don't expect. Let them act, and then, converse with them. The way I started my characters turned out to be completely different by the time I was done. And I realized that people develop even in fake worlds. People do develop, and I was not expecting that. I owe theater a lot, and acting, performing, for letting me be who I am now, I'm definitely more open. And as far as who I think I am goes, I keep my options open. I don't let myself believe one thing or the other. It's not black or white. I see different shades, and I see different colors, and I'm going to let those colors go wild. I'm not going to limit myself anymore.
Yes, it seems like, there's kids who join for stage who want to act, and there's just kids who just want to be on stage to get a new experience, and just grow from it. And there's kids who just try to do both at the same time. So I know kids who just did it and never came back, never tried to do a show or anything like that, and they still, doing program, and they're more comfortable with themselves in different environments. So I mean, I think it definitely sticks with you no matter if you do it for 1 semester or 5.
I was studying with the Eastside Institute and with Carrie, and she's become a very dear friend of mine. And I've also begun in social therapy. And social therapy is a group therapy developed at the Institute. And in the last group session I was in, I kind of sort of jumped in and said that I find that I'm having trouble kind of participating fully in the group, and that I feel that people are not actually it seems to me that what they have to say is more important than what I have to say, because they probably need more help. And then Carrie said to me, "That's pretty arrogant." And that was like really hard to hear. And so I talked with her about that. And then later on that week I was talking to Lois Holzman, who's the director of the Institute. She's present right there. and she said like, "Oh, but that's not so, like, I don't see why that's such a big thing. Like, you know, of course you're racist and classicist. Like, you know, you're a white man brought up in an affluent country in Denmark, and you're brought up to think that the more clever you are, the more knowledge you have, the more you've been in these institutional arrangements. Like, of course you're looking to some extent down on other people. And I didn't think I would be able to say that right now, before I got that paper." So that was, yeah, both in therapy and in my relationship to these people. I continually find myself going beyond myself into some relatively uncomfortable places, but also gaining a much bigger appreciation of who I am and what I have to contribute and build with, and where my limitations are.
I can still develop, meaning that what I do can change how I see things and how I do things. And that way I see possibilities of development. In terms of myself, I previously talked about personal growth, but in addition to that, it's also about development in terms of what I do. Meaning that there will be changes in the manner in which I conduct my teaching, the manner in which I approach community development. And I would say that, having said that, I think like right now I am more interested in seeing what development can really be. I'm just at the beginning of experiencing development age, because previously I thought I was very much developed.
Jill is a
Brazilian woman.
Brazilian woman. Can you read the rest?
Yeah, I am a Brazilian woman who just moved to Amsterdam from Taiwan with my Dutch husband. Right now I'm not running any kind of social therapy group in my professional life, although I feel like I'm having with my husband. We are fresh married and we have no clue about what it is to be married. And plus we just moved together to Holland and we just found this apartment 3 days ago. So here we are performing marriage, creating our space together, negotiating, discussing, playing. Sometimes we get so lost in this play. Some activities don't help us to develop at all. Others, I feel like we are playing a head taller than ourselves. Sometimes so enjoyable, sometimes so tough. And in this very daily basis, activity, I feel like we are building a group as well as we are developing individually. This approach is helpful for me to create a more developmental environment in my marriage.
who we are concentrating on our problem and who I am. We never think in that way, how can I become? That is the main thing. I am this, I am concentrating on my this. But I never think about what I can become. That is the main thing. And the development, which the purview development, it is so widened that each people have the capacity to create and the capacity to develop. It is new to me. I am thinking about my development. I never think I have to develop with the other people also at the same time, from the same platform. I have to extend my hands to other people for their development. I never think in this way. So, as a student of this class, I am transforming myself, my attitude, my perception, and at the same time I am thinking how I can introduce this concept to my country.
Nothing that I learned in teacher education transformed my teaching as much as that. And I know that what it was I suddenly was able to see the group in the classroom, right? That I was not working with 15, actually 20 individual 4-year-olds, but that we were an ensemble spending our days together and growing together and not growing together and all of the different things that can happen when you recognize that the group is more than the sum of the individual people in it. So in the course of the few weeks, as I started to begin improvising, because in improv, everything you do is with the ensemble. There's no individual I in improvisation. It's individuals giving what they have to give and the group creating with that. It changed, rather than figuring out how to help individual children fit into the group, what I recognized is that I had a responsibility to support the group's growth. Now, my understanding of that has become much more sophisticated over the years, but I actually think that moment of transformation is what has allowed me to go on and create environments where groups can grow, which is recognize, I'm not saying it as I wanted to, but that I didn't have to help every single child in the class, that I could create an environment where this group could grow, and in that, those individual children had a much better shot at going beyond themselves. So in this section, in varying ways, I think the participants are talking about their growing understanding of groups by participating in the Institute and the All-Stars approach to group work.
Development comes from performing as a community. Performing not on a stage, but performing in life together and in groups together. And so in our discussions, it's become clear, and in this discussion, like for us as grown-ups, that our development is coming through our being together as a community, doing together, talking, yes, as a community. And then so it sounds like, if anything, that's the connect, that's the filter that I'm doing and that I feel like I'm hearing you all doing, which is that if we are developing, we're developing together. That as far as I can tell, no one develops in isolation and, just comes out 10 years later being developed. The development is social and integrated and transactional, interrelational, I think Fred says. And that is what is provocative and intense, and sort of the thing about that someone said about how can you invite these 30 kids in the room and then tell them to split up and be quiet and listen. You can, but also there's this idea that to grow and to do something together, it's together, and then we'll see what happens from that. So that is a thread for development that I think has come through.
Relating to building groups that grow, with me, I learned that once you belong to a group, each of us are part and parcel of what goes on within that group. Everyone is responsible for what the group does. If there is success, it's for all, and a failure is for all of us too. I feel that when one of us goes out there and develops or performs the activities that she learned from the class as a group and comes back to report on it, to me that means the group is continuing to grow, and it will mean a success story for the whole group, because the group was part of building the ideas that one has used to develop because the group was part of building the ideas that one has used to develop and to perform what they report about.
My experience with group work in this institute is that of creating. It's not like individuals have to bring separate entities, but one individual can just raise something and the whole group will build using that one thing that is raised. And I think that is very much different from the traditional or what I've always known as working as a group.
Did you ever heard the word ensemble before you tried to do that stage?
I heard star before. I'm gonna be a star. Ensemble, please. I mean, that was one of those reality checks for me, because, I guess coming from like high school, like a lot of kids, expect like, they're good and like that's all that matters. So when coming here, when you just try to be like, stand out in a group, it hurts the group more than just you. So for me, I don't know, it took me a while to get into that. I think, even after, it's still continuing now. I mean, I think, we can say like, I was kind of an asshole. I don't know say that word, but I mean, I don't know, I just didn't, I wasn't thinking, like, I don't know, like I don't know, I'm trying to find the right word to use. I wasn't thinking, I don't know how like a kid should think. Like, I was so into myself and what I had to do that everyone else just didn't matter to me. Like, I know when I came into Youth on Stage, I was like, I'm going to grow as the best actor I can be, and I'm going to leave and do what I have to do. I just thought, I was going to join, do these classes, graduate, add it to my resume, and get out the door and never come back. So
how do you think about it now? How has your attitude changed?
for me, I mean, actually, when I started noticing when I was growing the most, when I was working with the group, that's when I realized that when I was working with kids who were older than me, and I was learning from them, that's when I was like, hold on a second, there's something more to it than just what I can get from just my improv class. I mean, there's stuff I can learn from, I learned from Cedar, stuff I learned from Randy, Dan, it doesn't matter. Like, Randy's younger than me, but I can still watch him and learn different things too, so I mean, one of the greatest assets I probably gained from stage.
I'm a Canadian man. I guess what I'm saying is that I learned how wonderful it is to be a part of a group where I am not the most special person in that group. I mean to say that long before I came to New York City, I thought I understood what it was to be a part of the group. I thought I knew what it was to be an equal member in a group, a member who was no more important than another in the group. I thought I had experienced that here at home in Canada. Well, what I experienced in New York City and observed in the social therapy session, I sat in on amazed and impressed upon me that I have so much more to experience.
We're not competing with each other. I don't try to keep my own learning to myself, because if Peter gets it, he's gonna get a better grade than me, because we're graded depending on how well we do compared to each other. Instead, I take what Peter says and I try to build something new with it, to create something new and to complete that. And then just while I'm doing that, then Simon starts saying something and he steals my line, and I go, and then it's suddenly transformed into something else that I could never have arrived at. And suddenly we're talking about something and have brilliant conversation about a topic, and I go, wow, who said that? And I have no idea, because it was the group who said it. Because we complete each other's thoughts and speaking. Yeah.
All of these participants come to the Eastside Institute, come to the All-Stars, having had many life experiences with learning and learning environments, as students, as teachers, or as facilitators, leaders, teachers. Inevitably, people make comparisons to what it was like to be in an environment that was focused on collective development rather than on acquisitional learning. Well, I don't think I ever asked a question that compared it, except possibly in the Youth and Stage one. And I don't feel like this presentation needs to be or is about a comparison. I think it is interesting to hear people speak of the challenges and rewards of creating environments where learning is not separated from development, and where the creation of the environment for learning, including the groups, learning and the group's development, is a priority.
For me, it also says that it gives me the opportunity to contribute something into the group, something that we all benefit, rather than the traditional way of learning whereby you kind of just take and not throw anything to or contribute in terms of what can be learned.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, I think, in terms of the facilitators of learning, I would say that they give us more opportunity to stretch ourselves, kind of, because you're not just sitting there and waiting to take something that you think is beneficial, but you create with others something that I can always take back to South Africa.
At first, I used to feel uncomfortable in our classes. Traditionally, I have learned that the facilitator would play the role, we would be learner only. Here I found that we are the speaker, we are the learner, and this we are doing together without having any difficulty. I always had the question in my mind, are we really learning anything? No one is telling us what is right, what is wrong, then are we learning? I felt courageous to speak whatever came to my mind, as no one was there to point me, you are wrong. And I learned I have enjoyed it and developed because of it.
I think one of the major differences is that there is no emphasis on development in school.
What do you mean by that?
It's not about how much you grow. It's not about how much better you become or how much further you have come. It's about right now we're gonna throw some stuff into your head. Right now we're going to teach you this. Next week you have a test. After that test, forget about it. Now we're teaching you something else. But here it's like, remember what we did 2 weeks ago? We're gonna bring that back in. We're gonna add something to it. And remember that person you worked with? We want to switch places. We want to create something like that. That's the difference. That's development.
I've created much stronger communities, which is funny because when I first started teaching 10 years ago, I was big on community and how my classes we're a community and we're a team. And I still have that, and I still say that, and that's what we are. We call ourselves, Team 207 instead of a room or whatever. But now we really, truly are a team in the way we interact with each other, and even when we're not interacting with each other as that, the way we can create it again. So it's very much the classroom community that it impacts, which I think is really important, but it has not actually, and I don't know if it should have or not, but it has not changed, for example, the way I teach reading, or what I know is good ways to
well, that math.
And what would like to teach in the context of a class where the community is continuously being built? Has that changed your relationship to the kids? Has it changed their relationship to
with
you?
each other, yeah.
So
is the teaching really
So
the same? I guess the teaching would be different then, is what you're saying.
well, again, it sounds like a really leading
The
question.
experience
Maybe
is
it's not.
different.
Maybe you build community from 9 to 9:30, and then you stop and you teach. So,
No, I see what you mean. And so the experiences that we're having, in the way that I would teach my same unit or something, the experience that I have with my children in doing it is different. The way they interact with each other, I mean, it's been so helpful at such a young age where they need a lot of support from, where my past experience, they needed a lot of support from an adult. Now I'm able to have little, groups of students working independently, taking care of each other, taking care of, themselves, being responsible for what they have to do. So the experience, right, so I guess it's the what I have to teach is the same, but the way it's playing out in the classroom is very different.
Yeah, I read something in a book about the giving game and the getting game, sort of, and this notion about, to me, a lot of traditional education for me is all about getting some knowledge from the teacher, and then I get smart, and then I can get a good job. Whereas when I find myself here, it's I might start out with that, but I don't really get anything. So our teachers tend to, and that goes for Lois and everyone else, tend to offer us opportunities for giving our ideas, our history, our examples, our questions, our confusion, our frustration to the group and to work with it as a group. But yeah, and that's usually when I get most out of it. And I get most out of it by giving. And I find that's really interesting. And I think that has to do with the improvisational way of teaching. That when we go into a class with a teacher, we don't actually know what's going to happen. And it seems to me that there's some general notion for our teachers or our facilitators or whatever about what the gist of where we're going. But if we offer something else, if we are talking about something that seems more important at that time, then that's what we're doing. So there's a response to the offer. It's not like if we're really frustrated and focused on something, the teaching is not about something else. Yeah. So it's unscripted in that way.
It's quite exciting. It's like you're playing this game with yourself or with others, which does not have an ending.
I want to end the video clip before we kind of come back to doing something together with a piece on performance, which I think is again, language fails me, but the other key concept that we're working with in this methodology. So bringing back to development and even to groups and to improvisation, the understanding that how human beings grow, what we are performers, that we're constantly creating and able to create new performances of ourselves, and that development, that performance can be and is a very developmental activity. And so the Institute is now part of a worldwide movement of people who make use of performance in their work in various ways. I'm going to ask you to do one more improvisational activity. So I'm going to divide the group into two parts. And building off of this final piece about performance, what I'm going to ask you to do, and each group's going to have somebody leading it, one or two people leading it, is to create, if you will, a performance response to everything that's come before. Something that you can give back to the rest of us in response to what we've just participated in and seen. So I'm going to ask Tony and Jill to lead this half of the room, and I'm going to ask Esben to lead that half of the room. And why don't you take, these are really improvised, so we're going to take 3 to 4 minutes to create them and then come back and present them to us. I'd like to present very quickly, without any thought. Please tell me the title of your performance.
Development.
Development. So I'd like to present for your viewing pleasure, Development.
Explosive development.
Explosive development.
Yay! Yes. We changed
We present for your viewing pleasure here at AERA, I Dream.
I dream of a world where people build community.
That carry.
I dream of a world
I
of
dream of the
students
joy
of
that they're
helping
doing.
each other.
of learning as hope.
Quiet.